Alrighty, well, let's go ahead and get going. It's one past the hour, so I want to make sure we have as much time as possible to get to all the wonderful things I have to show you guys today. So like I said, this is the advanced webinar for all things board views. My name is Dan. I'm part of the customer success team here at Monday.com. I also have a few of my wonderful colleagues on as well. They'll be helping me out. So Lindsay and Alex are attending here with us, so they may be answering some of your questions and also helping us out to make sure we can cover as much information as possible. So let's go ahead and get started by just going over a quick agenda and then a few housekeeping items as well. So for today, this is an advanced webinar. So if you're brand new to the platform, we're certainly glad to have you. But if you are looking for more of a kind of basic walkthrough of all the functionalities in Monday.com, I certainly recommend checking out one of our live or on-demand basic webinars. We host them live daily throughout the week. So you can sign up for those at monday.com/webinars, but I think definitely happy to have you on today as well, because I think there'll be a lot of useful information that you can take away. So we'll start with kind of the board view basics. What are board views? How do you add them? Those sorts of things. Then we're going to do a deep dive, and I've got two exciting scenarios prepared for you guys to kind of highlight all the wonderful things about board views. Along with those two scenarios, obviously this is an advanced webinar, so we're going to be going through all the advanced tips and tricks, things that better ways to visualize your information and take the data that's already there and see how you can kind of digest it in different ways. Finally, we'll wrap things up with a Q&A party at the end. So it's my intention to leave as much time as possible for questions, because I think that's one of the biggest benefits of things like this is not only the questions that you might have, but hearing questions that other people might ask as well. So with that in mind, let's jump over to the housekeeping items. Speaking of questions, you can ask questions anytime throughout the webinar, but I did want to draw your attention, as we've been using the chat to go over some awesome superheroes, you will also notice there's a specific Q&A section within your Zoom window. So I ask that you please put all questions in that Q&A section. That'll make it easier for us. That'll make it easier for you as well to make sure those questions get answered. We don't want things to be lost in the chat as we go along here. So be sure to use that Q&A. You can put things in there throughout the webinar, so you don't have to wait till the end. You can start asking questions as I'm talking, but again, we'll get to those at the end. I'll spend about 30 minutes or so going through the platform, and then we'll try to leave at least half the time to go through those questions at the end. So again, we'll try to answer as many questions as possible. I hope to get to all of them, but if for whatever reason we're not able to answer yours, or you maybe need some more clarification, you're always welcome to reach out to our awesome support team, just support@monday.com. You should be hearing all the audio through your computer speakers. So if you run into any issues with the audio or the visuals, let us know in the chat. Either myself or one of my colleagues can point it out, and then we can make sure that we're all good on this end too, so that other people can see and hear us. Finally, following the webinar today, there'll be a recording of this exact meeting, because I know we have so much good stuff that you guys are going to watch this over and over again, kind of like The Office on Netflix. You're just going to binge this webinar. So you can do so at monday.com/webinars in a couple days, and also that recording will be sent to you. Okay, so that's all we have for housekeeping. So now it's time for the good stuff. Let's go ahead and dive into the platform. Switch over here. All right. So as I mentioned at the top, I've got a couple different scenarios for us to run through today. The first one's going to be sort of a branding agency, so a media company that does marketing, branding, video projects, things like that. And the second one's going to be more of a development team that's handling bugs. So we've got our Valley Boys Branding, which is our branding company, and A Bug's Life for our mobile app called woof.com. There's going to be a lot of Office references in here, so apologies if you're not familiar with the show. But but we'll go ahead and get started here. So off the top, you know, when we talk about what are board views and why are they important, as you've probably noticed, and as you can see here just from a snapshot of this board, we love making things visual here at monday.com. So we're all about colors, you know, as you can see with the status labels and making things pop off the screen to draw your attention to the things that are important on your boards. So board views take that visualization to the next level by allowing you to consume the information on the board in a way that makes sense to you. So I know personally, you know, I'm a very visual learner, but each person has their own style. And so board views really allow you to tailor make, you know, certain views to digest the information that's already here in a way that makes sense to each person individually. So, you know, I definitely want to make sure we're all on the same page. So I'm gonna cover some of the basics, and then we can kind of do a deeper dive into some of these board views. So in the top left corner, this is where you'll access all of your board views on your board. So it's going to default to the main table, and the main table is referring to this main view. So it's the look you know and love with monday.com. You've got your groups, your items horizontally here laid out with your different columns. So to access any of your board views, this is where you'll see them listed here. And you'll also be able to add new board views from this drop-down menu. If you've been with monday.com for a little while, you may notice lately that the board views look a little bit different now. And let's go ahead and add one together really quick so I can show you more about what I'm talking about. So for me, I'll touch on this scenario before we add a view to backtrack really fast. So with this board, this is sort of like a high-level CEO style view for my branding agency. So as the CEO, you know, I want to be able to see all the information I want in one place. So whether that's who my clients are, you know, what team member is responsible, when our drop dead due date is, you know, when the project's being worked on. I have a priority column, a few status columns to denote different stages of the project. We've got numbers and formula columns to show the revenue and project out how much money we're going to make. Then we've got contact information for these people, a location column for on-site visits, files column for contracts, and then tags to kind of tie things together across different boards. So obviously a lot of information horizontally there to work with, and that's where we can use board views to supplement some of this stuff. But for me as the CEO here, it's really important for me to know, you know, what my team members have on their plates. I want to make sure that nobody's getting overloaded and that they all can handle the things assigned to them. So that's where the timeline view is really, really valuable. So let's go ahead and add a timeline view together. So as I alluded to, you know, if you have been with monday.com for a while, you may notice a difference in the way board views look. This is actually a brand new feature for us. So it's called the full screen board views. You know, we understand that, I think our team realizes here that your screen space is really precious, and we want to make sure that we're taking full advantage of, whether you're on a large monitor or a small laptop, that you're taking full advantage of seeing the content you want to see and having access to everything in one place. So with that in mind, we've rolled out these full screen board views to allow you to see kind of a larger version and take up more of the screen space to make sure you're not, you know, getting half of one view and half of another. That said, if you are a fan of kind of the split view of being able to see your board view at the top and see your board at the bottom, I have really, really exciting news that I'll get to in just a second, so please stay tuned for that. But again, so this is the timeline. This allows me to see kind of what my team has on their plates. Just to touch on the logistics here, once again, your board views are accessed from this left pane. I can rename any board view here with the pencil icon. So I'm just going to call this timeline, and we're going to call it team. So I know that this is broken down by team member. Moving kind of left to right here. So with any date related ones, that's the timeline of the calendar. I can switch between weeks, months, years to have a different view of these dates. I can use this icon to export to Excel. So that's very valuable if you know, I have people maybe that aren't using the platform and I need to send it over to them, or for printing purposes, exporting to Excel is a great option. And then, as I alluded to here, this is brand new as of, I think, maybe Monday, we just added this back into the platform. So this is kind of a throwback to the old style, but this allows you to switch quickly to that split view. So for some board views, it makes a lot of sense to have, be able to see your items below and be able to access this view at top. You can resize it, but that's still available for you. We want to make sure that you're not losing that functionality, but still being able to take full advantage of this full screen board view. Finally, on the right side, we've got our settings tab. So this pops out for all different board views. There's different types of settings to configure. For the timeline specifically, as you can see, it's going to pull in any date-related column. So whether that's a timeline cell or an individual date column. For our purposes, though, I really just I don't care as much about the due dates on here, those individual dates. So I'm going to uncheck delivered by just to kind of narrow it down so it's just the timeline. Again, I have it grouped by owner, so I can group this in a couple different ways. Most recently, we just added the ability to change the board views to separate them by group. So if I were to do that, I can see all my video projects, marketing, and branding in the same way as they're lined up on the table view or the main table. Another thing to note is you'll notice that the colors on the board view, speaking of the visualization, those are going to line up with the colors of the groups on the board. So when I'm working with these different project types, I can change the color of any group, and that's going to be reflected on our board views as well. Finally, for the timeline specifically, you do have the ability to check mark it into Gantt mode here. So that makes it more of a kind of waterfall style where it's going to cascade down instead of kind of putting things on the same row like you'll see with this bottom group. So we're going to go back to owner for now. And again, I'll show you one more time. So it kind of puts things chronologically working down as well. Perfect. So this is a view of, again, the timeline view. So I can quickly now see different elements. On these board views, once again, you can edit everything that you can do on the main table from this board view in one way or another. So with the timeline specifically, it pops out to me right away that Jim Halpert here is working with Camping World till tomorrow, but then really doesn't have much else lined up. So I might, as the CEO here, I might think it may make more sense to pass Sweet Pete's off to him. So I can quickly just select this icon, and I'm going to just reassign that to Jim. And again, I can do that right from this timeline view by just selecting any of the options here. And it's going to give me this card view pop out where I can see all the information and change anything on this view. I can also adjust the dates of the timelines and move them around. So that's going to be reflected in that card view as well. Perfect. So that is the timeline, and I hope that gives you a good idea of kind of the basics here. One more thing to note: you'll notice that this pop out as well. So there may be a scenario where you have items on your board that maybe don't have a timeline on them yet. So maybe they're brand new and you don't know what the timeline is, but they're added. Again, we want to make sure that you can see everything that you could see on the main table. You can see it in this view without needing to switch back if you don't want to. So this is where you would see those. If I switch to timeline, I'll go ahead and just add a new item really quick. We'll create it here. So hypothetically, this would be an item that doesn't have a timeline date associated with it, but it is added to the board. So I'd be able to see that on the right side. So I have a feel for anything that doesn't have timeline dates. And then I can even quickly add timeline dates there as well, just by clicking add, and it'll disappear from that side panel there. Perfect. So that's just a quick note on that. Let's hop back to the main table for just a moment now. Okay, so now what I want to do is do more of a deep dive into some of the different board views at our disposal. So as I mentioned, when we add new board views, you can do so from this panel. I also want to show real quickly, if you go to more views, this is our views center. So right now we've got 8 different views that you can work with, and we'll touch on all of them in one shape, in one form or another between the two scenarios. But this is where you can add those views and also add them from just the generic list here. The more views will just allow you to access the other ones that aren't listed there. So in addition to the timeline view, it's also important to me to see kind of those drop dead dates, but it's not as valuable in that view we were looking at before. So with that in mind, I've got a calendar view already added here. So the calendar view is super valuable for me to be able to kind of keep a high level understanding of when due dates are coming up, like when these things need to be delivered. We can use this to run our meetings. We can use this to kind of forecast out for the week as to what we need to do and things that we need to prioritize. As you can see here, this is sort of a mess with the timeline dates in here as well. It's not super valuable to see everything in this view for my purposes here. So similar to what we did with the timeline, I'm going to pop open the settings, and I'm actually just going to eliminate the timeline now. So this now gives me a much cleaner look, and now I can see what due dates are coming up on what days, and have a way to forecast out what we're looking at. And again, we can switch between week and day view as well if that's valuable. If you do add hours to your different date columns, so if I were to add an hour to this by going to add time here at the bottom, we could allow that to show up as well by check marking it on the right. So this is the calendar view, pretty straightforward, but again, it's a way to digest that same information in maybe a more valuable sense that I don't have to sit there and process, what dates those are associated with. I can see it all in one place and have that very easily accessible within the platform. Similar to the timeline as well, we can use the split view to see them all in one place. One other benefit with these views, like with the timeline view where you can adjust things from within, you can do that here on calendar as well. One other benefit is I can also add items to individual days. So just by clicking on any of these days, it's going to pop up in this card view where I can fill out the full information here, or just submit it with minimal information, and it'll add it for August 7th or whatever day I click on. Wonderful. Okay, so we're going to reset, head back to the main table for a moment. So I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but I'm located in Phoenix, Arizona. So I'm on the West Coast here, and I've got a few clients that are local to me. So so with that, I've added this location column to be able to see where all my clients are at in case I end up doing any on-site visits. While their addresses are nice to have, it would be much better to be able to see where they're at on a map, so I could more easily plan out these visits, depending on what parts of town I'm in. So for that, we're going to add the map view to the board. And the map view is one of my favorites. I think it's just, when we talk about visualization, it's pretty straightforward with what it's visualizing, but it's super valuable for certain scenarios. Definitely if people, I know we've had users that are, have managed multiple store locations and things like that. And this allows you to kind of split them up and have them in an easy to digest manner here in the platform. So not to belabor the point, but you can also see a similar theme here with the colors being represented on the map. So depending on the group they're in, that's going to represent which color shows up on these pins. And as you probably saw too, when we're zoomed out, it's going to bunch them up into kind of a cluster to kind of give you a general idea, and then you can zoom into the map to get a more precise view. So what's helpful about this is I can then see, as I'm working in the greater Phoenix area, this allows me to easily see where all my clients are located. If I'm maybe on the east side of town on next week, I know that I can visit these 4 clients easily, whereas these ones might take different trips to visit. So with any of these pins on here, you can click on the pin to see a preview from Google Maps and Google Images. We can also open up that same card view to be able to edit all this information and change anything just like we can on the other views. So that is the map view, a super helpful tool if you have anything location-based in your use case. Okay. So, when I think visualization, when I think of board views, I think one of the most popular options and one of my favorites, being more of a math person, is the chart view. So charts in themselves are pretty self-explanatory, but the things you can do with our charts and the different scenarios you can set them up for are truly endless. So, so let's go ahead and add a chart view together now. So when we add the chart, it's going to default to a pie chart, but you have a couple different options here. So you've got the bar chart and line as well. We're going to leave it on pie chart for this scenario. So, you know, again, being the CEO of the company, I want to see kind of where my biggest clients are and who maybe I should prioritize based on the kind of money that they're bringing in. So when it comes to the pie chart for the labels, we're going to label it by name because I want to see my different clients. These are the item names, and it's going to split them up evenly to start. That's where we use this weights drop down to decide what we're weighing them by. So you can weigh these by other columns, mostly numbers columns here, but I could also weigh them by the priority column with the stars. But for my purposes, I'm going to weigh them by projected revenue, so I can see kind of who's kind of my big money makers and where, you know, above all else, all clients, you know, should be created equal. But if it comes down to it, there may be some clients that need some extra love and attention based on the money they're bringing in. So right away, we can see it pops off the page that if I have a problem with Prestige Worldwide, one of my premier clients, then we have a serious issue since they make up more than half of the revenue that my company's bringing in. So, so again, this is a really helpful way to be able to see right off the bat where I should spend my time and energy, and who's kind of the big money makers for me. A pro tip on the chart view, and really any chart or any of the different charts that we have, one of my favorite features, is sort of a hidden feature with the pie chart specifically, is I can click actually these different options to eliminate them and kind of see a more dynamic view. So maybe I only want to focus on these four, or I want to take out, you know, other than Prestige Worldwide, I want to see everybody else. Who else is my biggest client? So we see then Camping World kind of takes over 40% outside of that Prestige Worldwide revenue. So you'll notice that the pie chart's going to update dynamically as we turn certain options off here. That's a really great tool to be able to kind of customize this view further and have it dynamically update throughout. Wonderful. So that is the chart view. So with my business, we've got many different files at play here. So being the CEO, it's important that we keep the contracts all succinct and in one place. So I've got contracts listed here in the files column. But, for being a branding agency too, we also are going to have things like, copy and different designs and prints that we need to look at and upload. So my team will upload those into the items themselves. But it'd be really helpful to be able to see all my files in one place, if I need to access them without needing to do digging as to figure out where they're at. So for that, the files view is very beneficial. So it's very, very simple in nature. It's going to aggregate all of the files on your board into one easy to read place. So I see large thumbnails of each of these files. I don't have to go digging for them in the items themselves. I can see them all in one place here. So the files view is searchable. So within the files view, I might know that all my contracts are PDFs, for instance. So if I just search PDF, it's going to eliminate those down to just show me the contracts. But I can also search names of files to quickly locate them. If you have, tens or dozens or hundreds of files, it's easy to find them here quickly. Lastly, we can switch between a list view and thumbnails, whichever is easier for you to digest. Again, that's what board views are all about. It's making the information easy to digest for you personally so that you can find what you're looking for. Perfect. So that's the files view. I wanted to pause real quick and touch on something else too. So with the views on any board, you can actually set these as sort of your default. So there's nothing you need to do to save them or anything like that. All board views that you add, these will be accessible to anybody who has access to this board on your account. So this being a main board means all of my users would be able to access any view that I add here. But when I leave this board, so if I select timeline, if for my use case, timeline makes the more sense, I can leave it selected on timeline, go to another board and come back, and that will be the view that I see to start. So I can always switch that up. I can go back to the main table and it'll save that for me. But this is going to save for whatever I prefer. When I leave the board and select it, it's going to stay on that one when I come back so that you can pick up right where you left off. Wonderful. So to tie a bow on this use case specifically, before we move on to the second one, this isn't an official board view, but it's more of a it's honestly kind of a bonus view that I wanted to talk about, and it's one of my favorite features in the platform. Honestly, I think you can use the filters here on the right side to actually create your own personal board views and save them to your account. So again, it's not an official board view that's listed in that board view center, but it is inherently a view in itself. And what I love about this is it allows you to take a huge board like this. You know, it's unlikely that I need to see all of this information at once at any given time. But it allows me to take a huge board and parse it down into more easily impactful boards, you know, more impactful boards for each individual on the account. So for instance, if I wanted to, I could create individual boards for each of my staff members here. So for Dwight, for instance, let's go ahead and start by filtering down to just the items assigned to Dwight. So there's only 2 at the moment. So you can also select a myriad of different things on this column too. It's kind of buffet style, so I can select as many as I want from each category to kind of narrow down what I want to see. But what you can also do is use this hidden columns feature to then parse the board down further. So for Dwight, you know, he doesn't need to see maybe, I think probably just one of the date columns would be good. So we'll take out the delivered by. We'll leave the priority maybe isn't as necessary on a day-to-day basis. So we'll leave the status columns, take out progress. I think the money information is mostly relevant to me, but then the person of contact, and we'll take out location, contracts, and tags since those are mostly relevant in my view. So now you can see we've taken this larger board and parsed it down to just this individual view. So when Dwight logs in, he can select this view and know right what he needs to work on and have all the information that's relevant for him at any given time. So to save this view, we'll open the filter again. And I'm gonna click Save View as New. So you'll notice it added one called table here. So we've got our main table and now this kind of parsed down version. And I'm gonna change this to Dwight and we'll click enter to save it. And now this is available on the account. So Dwight could come in here and select this as his view, and he'll only see the items assigned to him and kind of have a quick view as to where the status is at for those items. So super, super valuable. Again, it's one of my favorite features because it allows you to make mini boards off one bigger board without having to spread your information out or duplicate information in different places. So that is our branding agency. I hope that was helpful for you guys. I want to switch now over to our second scenario, which is called A Bug's Life. So if you've watched The Office, there is a reference to a social media app that aggregates all your social media stuff into one place called a Woof. So this is essentially a scenario where we are responsible for the woof.com mobile app. And this is a place that my dev team can track and manage their bugs to make sure we're crushing those bugs and staying on top of them. So, you know, it's important for my CS team to be able to submit bugs in a clear, concise manner, and then my dev team to have a place to manage those and work through them effectively. So you'll notice, just to touch on the structure of this one really quick, we've got, these are the item titles in this case represent a quick description of what the issue is. I've got a creation log to show who submitted the bug and when, the dev who's assigned to it, the status of where this bug is at, what type of device it is, Android or iOS, how high priority it is, was it able to be replicated, the version of the operating system, a long text column for more description on each bug, and then when it was last updated, a timeline, and a dependency column, which I will get to in a little bit. Okay, so as far as board views go in this scenario, I want to start by talking about the Kanban view. So the Kanban view is a very popular one, especially in a lot of dev environments. I know that it's helpful to be able to see sort of a card view and be able to move things kind of horizontally across to completion. So in our scenario here, I've got the Kanban view split up by status, but again, we can split these up by any any different status columns. So I'm using the general status. That makes the most sense, but if we wanted to, we could do priority or even by device to see them split out that way. We're gonna leave on status for now, because the goal for me is, again, to be able to move things from left to right. So from working on it, maybe it gets stuck at some point, but we wanna have it in testing. We may be waiting for info, but the ultimate goal is to get it into that done category. So then we have it also, I've added the assignee as well. So if you have multiple people columns on here, you can choose which one you want these associated with. So I can see the developer right away. And these cards are same thing like with all our board views. I can click on them to see all the information, but I can also click and drag these to move them along. And I can add new items directly from these views as well. So I can type in a title here and it'll add that card within the platform here on the Kanban view. So yeah, super helpful view here. Depending on your scenario, it may be helpful too to have them split up by groups. For me, I think it's mostly important to see them all in one place. But if you wanted to, you can check mark divide by groups to then see just my in progress ones, maybe my on hold ones, done, and so on and so forth. But for this scenario, I think it makes most sense just to leave them all here. Perfect. Okay, so next up is the form view. With this scenario, like I mentioned, this is a place where my CS team can pass along bugs to the dev team. Now, when they're answering tickets, when they're answering phone calls, I want to make sure they can move fast and effective, and be effective in what they're doing without having to leave their ticketing platform like Zendesk and just be able to submit a bug really quickly. So that's where the form view is really, really valuable. So I can create a form that my CS team can then submit to quickly log that bug and just have have this bookmarked in their web browser without needing to maybe log into the platform and find this board and log it manually. So the form takes your column structure on your board and turns that into a form that is submittable from outside parties as well. So any submission to this form is going to create a new item on the board. A couple of logistics with the form view. You can add an account logo to make it a little bit prettier. It's going to default to the Monday one, but if you do upload your logo in the admin settings here, you can add your own logo in as well. You can also add your logo in the top left as well. But I also want to change the background, make it a little bit more friendly here. So let's go ahead and choose a nice bright green. Wonderful. So what you'll notice with the form is by default, it's going to match the titles of each question here to the ones you have on your board. So let me go to the split screen view really quickly. And so you'll notice that there's some that aren't showing up. So things like creation log, that's going to be added automatically when I submit the form. So it's not going to show up on here. But there's others that are going to show up like dev assignee that I don't really want listed on my form. So what I can do is, I can go and hide those columns, or I'm sorry, the dev assignee is not on there, but the status, for instance, as to if it's stuck or in progress, that's not something that would need to be on the form because that'll be handled once the bug's submitted. So I can go in and hide that column here by clicking the eye icon. So that'll make it invisible from the public form. I can also rename these. So, this is device. I could name this phone, for instance. And it doesn't affect the actual column title on my board, but allows me to further customize this form. With each form submission too, I've got here, like for the title, for instance, quick description of the bug. I can even then add a description for these categories. So I've titled this phone, and then I'm saying, is it an iOS or Android phone? And they'd be able to select this from the dropdown. Another item here is the required field. So there's certain elements that are crucial to this bug. Obviously, having a title, knowing what type of version it is or what type of phone it is, and the priority as well. I want those required. Also, if they're able to replicate it. But there's other things that maybe are either unknown or less important. So for like the operating system, it'd be great if we had it. But if not, that's not the end of the world. So we're not going to make that required. Same thing with description. So this is the long text column where they'll be able to add more details if they have it. But not a requirement in this case. Let's go back to the full screen view here. You'll notice with the settings on the right side, I just want to touch on these for a second too. So we can select which group these form submissions go in. So I could even add multiple forms, depending on your use case for different groups. So I could have a form that goes to each group. But for our purposes, we're just going to select new bugs for this form. Then you can customize the messages that when they submit their form, and also add a redirect link. What happens when they submit? You know, does it give them the option to do another one? Things like that. Have the ability to do an anonymous submission if it's more of kind of like a private survey sort of thing. And then we can also present as a survey. So that's going to show kind of a counter at the bottom to show them how many questions they've answered and how many they have to go. So when your form is ready, you can share it in a couple ways. So right now, I just want to show you what it looks like. So we'll preview the form. And this is what this URL is going to look like when they go to it to fill it out. So again, my CS team could bookmark this link and just quickly be able to log those bugs without needing to change platforms. Perfect. Let's head back to the platform here. And when sharing the form, you have a couple different options. So you get the shareable link, which was the link we were just on, and you also have an embed code in case you wanted to embed it on a site on your website. Perfect. Okay, so we talked about chart views already, but I wanted to add another chart view as well to kind of show a different variation of what we can do on this board. So, so we did the pie chart before. For this scenario though, I want to add a bar chart because it's important to me to see which developers are crushing the most bugs. So I want to kind of have sort of a high level scorecard to see who's kind of being productive and which of my staff members are crushing bugs the most. So we're going to split this up by dev assignee. And we're going to wait by count to see how many are done. But for this scenario, we're going to, let's see. Yeah, we're waiting by count. And I want to filter this actually because I don't want to see all bugs assigned to them because this doesn't tell me anything about, you know, who's completed them. This is just who's assigned. So let me filter this down a little bit further. I'm going to say just with the status done. And now I can save this to the view. So like we did before, not only can I save filtered views, you know, on the main table, but I can also save filters related to specific charts. So we're going to call this chart, let's call it bug count or done bugs. So again, that filter is going to hold in place when I hop to a different, different view here. It's going to hold on to that filter because we saved it. Any changes I make to the filter anytime, you know, I can just update it and click save to view. It'll save it on the existing one. I don't have to save a new one each time, but I can definitely create other variations of this chart if I'd like. Perfect. Just 1 second here. All right, so let's hop back to the main table. And we just have a couple more views to show, and then I definitely want to get to some of your questions. Okay, so we talked about the timeline view already as well, but I really am excited to show you this next part. So, so we've recently added dependencies into our platform. To do a quick overview on dependencies, I won't spend much time on this since we're focused more on the board views themselves. But dependencies are located in the automation section of the platform. So if you go to the Automation Center, they are set up by these automation recipes. So we've got a few different options in terms of dependencies. The one I'm going to showcase today is this first one. So ensure that the date of an item always starts after the date of its dependency item. So, so this is really valuable if, I can't start my next bug until I finish this first bug. So if there's a delay with that first bug, I need it to be reflected in that second bug so that I'm not stacking up and I don't have to manually change all the dates in that scenario. So when you before you add any dependency automation, you'll add a dependency column here, and it'll prompt you to add one if you add that automation, but you can also add it from the column center here. And this dependency column allows me to denote which task depends on which. So I've got, Michael Scott's responsible for all three of these, and they kind of cascade down. So I've got, bug 2 is dependent on bug 1, bug 3 is dependent on bug 2. So I've selected which one each one depends on, and they kind of just go down. Those three need to happen in order. So if we open the timeline view, I'll show you the exciting piece of this and how these work. So I've got these in order here, but again, I want to filter these really quickly to just show, because I'm really on my timeline, only worried about in progress bugs. So let's save that to the view really fast. And now I can see we've got a couple, these tasks I've set up dependencies on. And this one's due today, but I know for a fact, you know, it's not going to be finished. So we're going to actually bump this back to Friday. And when I do so, you'll notice those other tasks move automatically. So that's the magic of dependencies in the platform right now. I will say again, I know because we get a lot of questions on dependencies, this is a very new feature for us, and I promise we're going to be adding more functions and more abilities to the dependency automations as well. But you can see a really simple application of this, but just to be able to move something on a timeline and have it update those other dependent dates without needing to manually adjust those. So it's going to always push them back so that they start after this one's done. So, so that is dependencies and the timeline. Okay, the last view that I want to show you to kind of wrap things up here, and then we'll get to your questions, is the broadcast view. So again, for this scenario, it's not as relevant that my CS team is always logging in, and maybe even high-level people at the company. They don't always need to log in and see everything on this board, but I want to have a quickly accessible way for them to see the information. So that's where the broadcast view is really valuable. So when we open the broadcast view, it's going to prompt us to start broadcasting. Similar to the forms view, you've got a couple different options here to be able to have a shareable link, or you can embed this on an actual site, and I'll show you more about that second option in a second. But if we just go to preview, this allows me to see my board sort of outside of Monday. So I don't need to have a login to see this. I can see this really easily just at this link. I can bookmark this page and have all this information accessible to me without needing to log into the platform. So another really valuable application for this is if you're managing something for a client that maybe doesn't have access to your account. You can broadcast a board to allow them to see everything in one place without needing to give them access to everything. And you can also have control as to what they see. So really valuable tool. And the reason I wanted to end on this one is this is actually something that we do here internally. So I'm gonna hop over here. So this is monday.com/roadmap. And we are actually using the broadcast feature, just like you're seeing on that other link, to broadcast our internal roadmap as to the features that we're working on. So when we talk about resources on your end and things to check out, I would definitely recommend, you know, popping in here to see kind of what we have on our plate, what's coming up, and the status of where things are at. And you'll notice this is using kind of the embed option that I alluded to as well. So this is kind of a option that we've iframed into this page, and you're able to see the board on this page as well. So that's, again, using that broadcast feature that we just touched on. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your patience and sitting through. I know we went a little bit longer than half the time here, but that's, we were able to touch on all the views I wanted to touch on. All right. So that, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today. I really appreciate you guys sticking around and attending the webinar today. Again, a recording is going to be sent to you so you can binge watch this over and over again later. Lastly, I want to finish with just some support resources. So I've mentioned a few times, you can email our team anytime at support@monday.com. Also, our knowledge base is awesome. So it's full of tons of helpful articles and videos. You can head over to support.monday.com for that. And our user stories page is one of my favorite resources we have. There's tons of real use case from real live monday.com users, and you can actually pull their templates into your own account if you find one that's relevant. And then finally, monday.com/webinars for all future webinars and recordings of past ones. Thank you so much, everybody. It's been a pleasure talking to you today, and I look forward to speaking with you all down the line. Have a great day.